we have owner uh, with us, and he is a big data Python freelance and consultant. So welcome to my channel, owner.
Thank
Uh,
you very much. Call me Rune or something like that in foreign
uh,
language.
because it's spelled like RUNE.
Yeah, it is, and it's difficult. It's actually an old. I don't know if you know about the Nordic countries. They have these Vikings that used to live there 1,000 years ago, and it's actually the written language, the runes, that my name is from. So it actually means wisdom or knowledge or secrecy, actually, because most people couldn't read back then.
Okay,
Yeah.
this where and why students should listen to you. Just to convey my audience that you are the right person to give advice to them.
Okay, so first of all, I started my programming journey when I was around 12 years old, and that's many years ago. And I got all my friends had these computers, but they could play a lot of video games on, and I really, really wanted a computer. My parents weren't very rich, so one day they got an old computer, a really, really old computer, and I got it, and I immediately was so happy. The problem was I couldn't play any games on it because it was so old. So I was sitting in front of my favorite thing, and it was a computer. So I didn't know what to use it for, so I just started programming, and that was many years ago. And it's just became an obsession by me to start programming. And back then there was no internet or anything, so it was just me and a book, and I got a friend start programming as well. And then one thing led to another one, and I went to university, to college, to study computer science. And I realized that I really, really loved learning new things along the way, because learning new things and doing new stuff is just something I love to do. So I actually decided to take a PhD in computer science. So I did that. But I must say, along the journey, I realized that PhD was also a lot about, getting fundings, getting money, and that was not really my thing. So after I did the PhD, I went working in as a programmer, and I've done that for many years. And I kind of like to be my own boss. So eventually, I stopped working as in a company, and I started trying to think, what can I do? So I realized I actually love to help people become good programmers, and I've been working in big data a lot, with a lot of big back-end big data processing. And a lot of the people that are using that are data scientists, and many data scientists often don't have a strong programming background, but they do have extreme good knowledge about the field they're working with. But so the challenge they often had is they're specialists in the field of the data science, whatever they do, the data. But programming, some of them have no background in it, and I really enjoyed helping them. So I thought, how can I help them better? How can I help more people? And then I started on the Corona. I was bored. I started this Learn Python with Rune, my channel and all that kind of stuff. It started just because in Corona we got isolated at home, and I had a lot of time, and I wanted to refresh a lot of things again, and I always loved Python. So it's actually a journey where I started to refresh my Python skills and started that again, and we're just sharing that with everybody. And one thing led to another thing, and suddenly I was sitting there helping a lot of people out there. So yeah, that's kind of my background. So I have a long history, I have educational history, and I just enjoy helping people. Does that?
That's great. That's great. So, for my audience, I would like to say that Oon has a YouTube channel with approx of 5,000 subscribers, named Learn with Python. Learn Python with Oon.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
And he also have a website, learnpythonwithOon.org. You can check out that also. I will give a link in description.
Thank you.
So, uh, I want to know more about what your channel about, and what your website is about.
Yeah. So the first thing I created, I think, was the website, and I think I created the YouTube channel immediately, but I wasn't really focusing on that. So actually, when I started Python online, in my experience, it was like I found this Twitter channel called 100 Days of Code, I think it's called. And so every day I was sitting trying to do a small project, and I actually made a tutorial on that on the web page. So it was very productive time where I created around 20 to 30 blog post tutorials about Python. And it was basically me refreshing a lot of things because I hadn't programmed professionally in Python for quite some time. So it was kind of refreshing all the framework, and I was just like, how would I explain that to somebody new to programming as well? So I kind of found the style to make tutorials, and then I just posted them on Twitter, and it attracted a lot of traffic to the web page, and suddenly, you also get organic traffic. So it was basically all the things I was doing, just most of it just for fun. So it was like some was data science, some was computer vision. I'd done a lot of that actually, and because I just thought it was funny, and then some machine learning, and what I'm doing professionally is not so much on the page because that's more like big data processing on the back end, and so that's actually not covered so much because when I do in my free time, I love to do something else that I'm doing in my working hours. Yeah.
So in your working hours, you do big data.
Yeah. So basically, you can explain it really, really easy. It is there's a lot of data people want to work on. So what you need to do is get that data inside some kind of data lake or something, some storage in some kinds. So it can be data from sensors, sensors sensing something about equipment or something. It could be data from ships sailing around. It could be data from, everything generates data nowadays. And you want to extract that data and put it inside some data. And often you need to do some transformations of the data because you want the data to be available in an easy manner. So the data scientist and the machine learning people can just pull out the data and do a lot of their thing. So that's basically what you do. So, but you need some, clusters working on that, and you can do it in the cloud, you can do it on-prem, you can do it in many ways. So that's basically what I'm building, and it's building in Python as well. Many people think actually Python is a very slow framework, but that's because they don't understand you can do a lot of libraries that makes all the heavy stuff behind the scenes. So, so basically you can do everything in Python. Another critique of Python previously has been like it's an interpreted language, meaning that you have an interpreter that understands line by line and go through the code, and so you get the failure on runtime. But nowadays there's so much monitoring and all that. The artists are basically making better monitoring, and then you don't have any problems with Python anymore as a production system. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So you explained it very well. So my next question is, if I talk about someone beginner, so how someone beginner who has no knowledge about ML or AI or big data, what roadmap you will give to him to start the programming and go in pro level of a big data or a ML or AI?
Yeah. So if you say you're a guy that wants to work with big data as a machine learning guy, for instance, right? So what people often get confused about is like, wow, I want to learn everything in depth. And there was actually one guy, I don't remember his name, but he explained it really well to me. It's like when you need to drive a car, right? If you have never seen anybody driving a car before and you see a car for the first time and can drive, maybe you look under the hood and you see this engine down there, and it's very, very complex, all these things down there. And you think you need to understand everything in detail, right? But basically, driving in car is quite simple. You just press a button and it turns on the engine, and you just use the steering wheel and maybe something else. You don't need to be a car mechanics in order to drive a car. Machine learning is basically the same. first of all, you don't need high-level computer programming skills. You don't need to be a computer scientist in order to make the things. You need to understand the models, what they're doing. You don't need to, and again, you don't need to be the car mechanics. You don't need to be able to program the models. You just need to know what the models do. It's just like you need to know when you press the gas in the car, well, the car starts moving, right? That's that kind of level you need to understand. So I think most people, when they start something, they think I would need to know everything in detail. So that's kind of the first mistake. No, you don't. You just need to learn. It's better just to use it on a high level and get the deeper understanding later. So my advice is basically take some of the easiest models, those that are prepared for you, and you just put data in and play around with them and get some experience with them. Because basically what you need is like almost just 10, maybe 20 lines of code, Python code, and you have something running. And what also surprised me a lot about machine learning was actually, it's a lot about just try it out, play around with it. There's no science equation that says this is the best model to use. No, you just try, you get experience. What people pay for is people with experience, know how to model things. And you get that by playing around with it, having fun. Often people, yeah. So step number one, you don't need to understand it in detail. Step number two, play around with it and keep it easy, and the understanding will come later. There are many things I don't understand in depth of these things because it's not necessary. It's not necessary. So that would be my first advice. And one thing that I find important is remember to keep it fun. Keep it, if you're taking it too serious, it becomes, make something that interests you. Have fun. I've done this. I know I've done this my entire life, programming, but I had fun all the time. It's just like, it's a gift to work with something that you have fun with, and it's really rewarding to be programming, machine learning, whatever. It's really rewarding because you create stuff. You're making stuff. That's amazing. It's amazing the power you have in front of your computer, right? You must also love that. When you sit there, you create something, that feeling. Wow, I made this. Huh?
Just I was saying that in a computer, even a single simple things makes a big thing. Like if you print a even or odd program as a beginner, and you write some number like 234, and computer tells that this number is a even number. So
Exactly.
for a newcomer, it's a fascinating thing. Wow, computer is telling us that this number is even.
Yeah, that's the amazing part because you made that, right? You made the computer do that, and that's an amazing feeling to get that. That's what I loved. Yeah. Also, yeah, sorry.
Uh, so if we talk about ML thing, do you have any course or something in your channel about for beginner to mid level or someone?
For machine learning. So
Uh,
it was machine learning, right?
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So right now I'm actually posting on my YouTube channel a full 10 hours series of machine learning where we actually start. So it assumes kind of you do know some Python programming, but I also have a full 8 hours video course on Python programming where you start from basically scratch and to understanding most things, but it will take practice on top of that. So when you feel comfortable about that, that machine learning course should kind of start you off with all the simple things and actually building to more and more complex, where you go to the deep neural networks, recurrent neural networks, convolutional neural networks, all those complex things, and also about how's it called, natural language processing, which is often overseen and extremely interesting area actually as well. But most people focus on categorizing pictures, recognizing handwriting, and it will cover all these things, how you do it. And again, on a level where we don't go deep into exactly how things are done below, but more about how you set them up and you get the level where you can play around with it afterwards. And I would say if you have that knowledge that I cover there, you should be pretty good to go and play around with it. And it, I would say it covers, you can never cover everything, but basically
Yes.
all the major things it covers in there and how to use it with the main frameworks used in that. So there's somewhere there more options, obviously, but I covered the main things in that course. And it's going to be in total of 10 hours of video hours. And they're prepared notebooks, Jupyter notebooks, so you can just get them from the GitHub. There's a link, and you download that, and you can follow along the lectures. And then there's a project where you could do it. And then afterwards, we kind of do it together, where I, in steps, projects, and you should go through everything, right? So my experience is that that's the best way to learn is to see somebody do something, then try it yourself. And often when you see something, you think you understand it, but when you try it yourself, you often get surprised by you don't really remember the details. So that's why it's so important to try it yourself. And I often tell people, don't give up. I've been seeing people doing stuff many times, and I think, okay, I get that. That's so trivial. But when I just sit by myself in front of the keyboard, I'm blank. Blank. I don't remember anything.
At the end, it's more about a practice. Practicing
Yeah.
things. The more
These
you
things,
practice, more good you will become.
yeah, exactly. And people often underestimate how much practice you need in order to be fluent. You, like I am, we are not native English speakers, right? So you probably remember a time we did understand English, right? But when you had to say something, the words were not coming to you, right? You
Yes,
weren't
yes,
able to
exactly.
find the right words. You knew what you wanted to say, but you couldn't express it. Programming is pretty much the same. So often when you see the solutions, like, yeah, that's so simple, I understand that. But when you're sitting and you're supposed to do it, it's just like, that's difficult. I don't get it. And then you read it, the solution, just like, why? And you think, am I stupid? But no, we've all been there, all been there. It's like,
We
yeah.
often find this. We often find this problem that while doing DSA or problem solving, we are stuck in some question, and then we try to solve. We try to check a solution, and after seeing solution, we are like, "What
Yeah,
the heck, man! It's too
yeah,
easy. We can do that."
exactly. But that's how it is.
Yes, yes,
And I think, obviously, I never tried. My programming is starting so long time before the internet, so I can understand. I think actually it's more frustrating nowadays because you find solution and you see you kind of get the impression that everybody just knows how to do it because you Google something and you see the solution and you're just like, but the journey it is, you keep up the courage. You have to fail a lot of times in order to be able to do it yourself. And maybe one big secret, I don't know if it's a secret, but for most people, I think they don't realize it. Highly paid programmers, they're not often not paid for the programming itself. They're paid for finding bugs. They spend way more time finding the most insane bugs in code. That's what the highest paid programmers are paid for, finding bugs, optimizing things that are making challenges, making systems fail. So it's kind of finding, the things that don't work. So it's not the programming, it's more finding things that don't work and make them work.
so we are losing the part where we should have to do more work.
Yeah. To add one more thing that I think often surprises people. So how can I tell this? Okay, so when I started programming, I thought kind of program was like a machine language or just like one way to communicate with the machine, right? But I've been in programming for so many years, and one thing that surprised me is there's much personality in the way you program. So when you program with people, it's just like, and you see somebody's code, even if you don't know who wrote it, you can see it because their style is in it. So actually, So when you're debugging somebody else's code, oh, this guy wrote it. This must be Thomas or whatever, some name, right? You can see it because it's his style of coding. There's actually so much personality in the way people solve things in programming that you can recognize it. And you know that also from language, right? You know how your friends are speaking differently, and you can recognize the words. They use specific words. Programming is the same. And when I started programming, I actually thought it was more like mathematical equations. There's like one way to do it, but no, there's so many ways. So what I'm actually also trying to say is often when we learn from online resources, programming, often you find some tutorial on something and then you follow along that one and you learn some skill from that, and then you follow some other guy's tutorial, and then a third guy and a fifth guy. The challenge is actually there can be so many different styles that it becomes confusing for you to learn it. So often what I want to advise people is try to follow mainly along one guy, one person's style. Because first of all, when you have a tutorial, they often assume different levels of programming and different styles and different knowledge. So, but if you follow one, then you kind of learn that thing, right? It's like, I don't know, in India, you probably also have a lot of different dialects, right? So
Yes, yes.
imagine, and I probably, if it's like in Denmark, it's even way smaller country, but it can be difficult to understand some very local dialects, right?
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
if I wanted to learn that language and I learned a bit from this guy and from this guy and this guy, I would get confused because it was so different, right? The same is with programming. If you learn a bit here and a bit here and a bit here, it can be confusing. And so my advice is try to focus from one source. Make sense?
Just yes, yes, yes. Just to add a point, just because you talked about India. In India, we have 2,000 plus native language.
Yeah, yeah,
Two
exactly.
thousand plus.
That's crazy. Amazing.
Uh, so uh, at the last, my question was, what advice you will give to a student? Uh, that one problem I think every student is facing, like they keep changing the language they used to code. Like someone used to code in C++, then they switch to Java, then they hear Python is a good language, then they switch to Python, then they switch to JavaScript. So, what advice you will give to them or me?
Yeah, that's a common problem. And what I think often is happening, and I know that myself, is that when something becomes a bit difficult, it's easier to start something new. And that's actually when we go back to what are the highest paid programmers paid for? They're not paid for programming, they're paid for finding bugs, solving problems, right? So what's most confusing when you start to program is when you sit with some problem and you sit with it, you probably tried it for hours and you can't figure it out, right? You don't know how to solve that problem. And then you give up. And then it's easier just to start something different. And you might think, okay, C++ or whatever is too difficult for me. Maybe I try something else. I read that Python was easier, and then you start Python, and then you get some problems there, and then you maybe Java is better, and then you jump around like that. Yeah. So basically, I would say, yeah, we have all the highest paid programmers. We are all sit sometimes with more than a week with one single problem we couldn't figure out to solve. But that is again that makes a difference. It is if you keep on trying until you make it or ask help, try to get help out there. Many programmers are willing to help out. So you see probably no Stack Overflow, and that's a great source to ask questions on. And people are willing to help. And yeah. So yeah, the advice is don't be discouraged. Don't think that you're stupid. Every highly paid programmer has tried it along the journey, has tried something they didn't get, and felt like everybody else understood it. I remember in college when I went there, there was some of the things was like, we had some exercises, right? We had exercise every single week, and then some programming challenges is like what I had hard time to understand, but everybody felt like everybody else understood them. But the key thing is to talk to your friends, ask them questions, and continue until you get there. and don't give up and try something new. It's I have never met anybody that is not intelligent enough to understand it eventually. Everybody has their journey. Everybody has something they understand faster, but and it different what's difficult for you to understand. But if you continue, you will eventually understand it. There's no question about it. Everybody can succeed in programming.
That's great. It's great. So students can understand that they can uh, choose any language, but try to solve a problem or a bug to a
Yeah,
week. If it takes week or 2 weeks, try to solve that bug by your own self
yeah,
as much as
and
you
it's
can say.
yeah, and it's okay to ask questions like on Stack Overflow or whatever networks you have. Ask questions, and people are often really happy to help. And and yeah, and what language to start with? I would always say it doesn't really matter. I mean, it should be able something that you desire to work with. And if you realize later it was a wrong language, I would say programming, it doesn't really matter what language you're using because you learn the mechanics. It's better to become good at something and then change later instead of being half good at this and then half good at something else, right? Become good at something first before you change. Uh, but I think that's with many things. If you do things until some limit, you become mediocre at everything, right? You need to focus. You need to have one success before you move on to the next one, I would say.
Yes, yes. So not I don't want to make this video too long. So anything to summarize all things at the end you
Yeah,
want to
so I still think if it's my thing, right? I always ask myself this question: am I enjoying my life? So if I go to work every single day and it doesn't feel right, you know, inside I feel I'm not excited to go to work. I think I need to do some changes, and it's been the same for me with learning. I love to learn new things, but sometimes you get kind of stuck, and I think I have to switch it around. Not that I don't want to learn what I'm doing right now, but I need to figure out a way to do it to make it enjoyable, because learning to program, even though and you had these rewarding feelings, if you want to become really, really good, you have to do it for years. Uh, you have to do for many years before you get really, really highly paid and you really, really enjoy it. And so you need to be able to every day to wake up and think, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm burning for. This is what makes my life happy. I always kind of like have this, if it doesn't feel right, you have to change something to make it feel right. Otherwise, if you can't make it feel right, then maybe it's not for you. But I often think you can change the things, the way you do it, so it feels good every day. I think it's important thing in life that you try to follow what feels correct, feels right. The feeling is important. Yeah.
so yeah, yeah,
I know it's not
that's
so
right.
much about programming, but I still think that's something you have to have in your mind. So you don't make it like, oh, I need to struggle through this journey and then I'll be a good programmer. Because programming is about learning the rest of your life, because technologies change all the time. So there will never be a day where you wake up and say, I learned everything. No, you have to
Yes,
keep on learning the rest of your life. It's different things from the beginning that you learn, but you will still have to learn new things all the way. It never stops.
evolving time to time. Things are
Yeah,
changing.
yeah.
So that's it, friend, for today. We would like to thank Un for his time. Thank you, Un, for giving time and advice to our audience and the students out there. So have a nice day, everyone, and Un. Please like, subscribe my channel, and also go and check Un's channel. I will give the link in description. Thanks. Un.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Bye.